a Chinese UV filtration pump for aquariums. First thing that concerns me a little bit about this particular product is that it includes this UK adapter, and the problem with these UK adapters is that they're illegal in the UK, and I'll explain why this is. The very first problem with this is that there is no fuse in this. Despite the fact that it says CE, there's no fuse in to interrupt any fault current that the device is pulling, which means that if this is plugged in and the device develops a fault, in the UK we have 32 amp ring mains, that's at 240 volts, and that probably won't get interrupted until the fault's something like 40 or even 50 amps, and that's a huge amount of current to be flowing down the cable to the device, and under those circumstances it will burn your house down. That is why all plugs must be fused. The next concern with this is that under the UK regulations there should be shutters on these ports here on the device. Now I know that this is an adapter, but that's why it's for use when abroad but not in the UK, and I'll tell you why that's dangerous. This pin is live when you plug it into the mains electricity. Once you do that, these terminals in here are live, and you might think, well, I can't get my fingers in that, that's relatively safe. Here's the plug that comes with the device. You've got to remember there's quite a low resistance between these two points because it's just a coil inside the device for the motor. So if I plug this in like this, the problem I've got now is that this terminal is now outside the device. Now that can't happen with UK plugs because of the shutters, but it can happen with these cheap adapters like this. So the problem with this is you or a family member or a child comes along and this is plugged in like this, and they grab it like that to pull it out and they're dead. And that's it. That's all there is to it. It is incredibly dangerous. Now that's not to say you can't temporarily use these like this. I mean, people do all of the time, but that's why you can't bring a product like that to market in the UK. Now, the device itself, all that's relatively easy to resolve. The first thing is, if you plug it into a four-way adapter like this, then you are protected by the fuse in the device itself and upstream. So that's one way of making it safe. The other way of making it safe is to fit a plug on to the end of the device. Doesn't matter what it is, but you've got to make sure that the fuse that's fitted in here matches the device that we're operating. Here it's a very low rated device, just a few watts, so the smallest fuse that we can fit is a 3 amp fuse, and that's relatively safe. The other problem is when you get Chinese imported equipment like this is that the copper that you find inside these wires tends not to be actually copper. It tends to be aluminium with a copper coating. Now for a very small current device like this, that's not really too much of a problem. This double insulation looks okay. I think it's actually copper in this one, so that's absolutely fine. Moving on to the device itself, I don't think there's anything wrong with this device. I think this device is absolutely fine. It all just depends on how good the seals are in it. So what we have is the water flows in through this filter, goes through a plastic filter which is just to trap large particles. That's all fine, similar to other designs. And then here's the motor housing itself, and I quite like this design. I think it's really quite good. So you unscrew this device, this tube here, so the water flows in through the bottom of the tube, goes out through the head, and then here we have the UV lamp, germicidal lamp. Now this is a standard 4-pin lamp. You can buy these on their own, and it's replaceable, and that's another thing I really like about this particular device. The other thing is these tend to fail where the seals are on these, and again I think this design's okay because that seal is held in place with this particular screw. So I don't think that's ever going to be a problem. I quite like that design. One of the things that does concern me a little bit about the way that these are sent in the post is that this tube here is unsupported. It's only supported at this one end, all the way down here. So when this comes in the post, it's unsupported. And I think that may be responsible for the most of the failures that we have here. So looking at the tube itself, pull this out. I ran this just for a couple of minutes and to see whether or not this tube was actually functioning, and the problem that I had is that both ends light up and they stay lit up. What you would expect to see with a germicidal lamp is that the lights will light up at the end until it strikes an arc, and then what you should see is a purple glow between the ends of that lamp. That doesn't happen with this, and I think the reason for that is that because it's only ever been supported at one end, the seal here has failed. So inside here it's just got air in it. That's also confirmed by the fact that it mists up at the edges here, and you can see what it's doing is it's just burning the electrodes. So we can demonstrate that. First thing to do, just to make sure that it's pushed all the way home. In fact, we can have a look at that, make sure that it's not damaged, which it isn't. Pop it back in again. This part number is quite common. You can buy them everywhere. Not a problem. So we slide this back on, and we don't need to fit that at the moment. The motor housing itself, it's a very simple affair. It's like a little inductive coil, and in here we have our little motor impeller, and all that does is it just runs inside. There's a magnetic field created by the mains electricity. This is all sealed, and this just follows that and pumps, and that's absolutely fine. I don't have a problem with any of that. Just got to, what tends to happen with these is that they wear, and if you run them dry at any point, they get destroyed within just a few minutes. So that's why I'm just going to remove that. So if I plug this in, what should happen is momentarily the ends should glow. Once they glow, you should see the arc should strike just like it does on any other fluorescent device, and then it should maintain the UV discharge in there. So if I turn this on, you'll see that the ends glow. No arc has been struck, and this just gets hotter and hotter and hotter and starts steaming up this outside. So this is not striking an arc. There is an emission happening at the top end, I think. Could just be my imagination. But at the moment I don't see anything striking. Just give that a few moments to warm up. At this point it's getting extremely hot. If it was ultraviolet, this would be fluorescing like crazy, and it's not doing. So there is no UV whatsoever. By comparison, this is UV. This is a UV germicidal lamp. This is very, very powerful, but you can see there's a massive difference. But we don't get any UV whatsoever from this. It's literally just heating up like an incandescent lamp. And the reason for that is it's now smelling very, very hot, because what's happening is these heaters are staying on. You can see what's happening here is that the heat from the heaters is actually burning those heaters out now, and it's going to start getting extremely hot. So I'm going to turn that off. And in fact you can see that it's starting to condense on the inside there, and I can't tell you, obviously you can't smell that now, but that's quite hot. Now you can use these germicidal lamps outside of water. Obviously once it's in the aquarium it'll be water cooled. That's not necessarily an issue, but it's pointless because this is not striking an arc, so this will just carry on heating the heaters at the end of the tube. So it's a little bit of a shame. I think the design itself is okay. I quite like it. I think it would work absolutely fine. I think its Achilles heel, apart from the electrical connection that it comes with, which can't really be helped with the Chinese import. That's just how it's designed for the Chinese market, so that's why it is the way that it is. But that's solvable. I think that's hot. I think the problem with these tubes is that it's probably not surviving in transit because it's only supported at one end, which is a great thing for the design for the actual device itself, but it needs to be supported at this end in transit. I think I'm not quite sure how that can be done. Maybe it needs some kind of packing down there at the bottom or something just to support that end of the glass when it's in the post. I mean, Royal Mail, these things just get chucked over a fence, that kind of thing. You've just got to be extremely careful with making sure that it's adequately supported at that end. It's just a little bit fragile there. Obviously, once it's installed with the new tube and that, I'm pretty certain the ballast in here will be absolutely fine. The problem is that tube is now full of air instead of neon or whatever's supposed to be in the mercury vapor. It's all basically escaped because it's cracked at some point in transit. So that's it. I'm hoping that we can probably just replace the tube and it'll be absolutely fine. But for future reference, when sending these out in the post, I think perhaps that tube needs to be removed, packaged separately. I don't know. There's no evidence that that's the case in the box, but I think it just doesn't survive the trip. Other than that, the rest of the device I'm perfectly happy with. I think it's absolutely fine.